The morning air on Kepler Station carried the metallic taste of recycled atmosphere and the distant hum of gravity generators. Maya Chen guided her hover chair through the crowded corridors with practiced ease, her dark eyes taking in the familiar sights of the orbital research facility that had been her home for the past 3 years. At 17, she had already spent more time in space than most seasoned explorers, though not by choice. The accident that had severed her spinal cord happened during her family's transport to the research station, where her parents worked as xenobiologists. A simple malfunction in the artificial gravity system during a routine jump had changed everything. While her body had healed, the damage to her nervous system remained beyond current medical technology to repair. The Galactic Council's advanced medical facilities could work miracles, but even they had limits. Maya had grown used to the whispers that followed her through the station corridors. Most of the alien species that made up the Galactic Council found human resilience puzzling. The tall, gray-skinned Altarians would tilt their heads in confusion when they saw her continue her studies despite her disability. The insectoid Zephyrians clicked their mandibles in what she had learned was their expression of pity. Even the dolphin-like cetaceans, swimming in their mobile tanks, would emit low-frequency calls that their translators rendered as sympathy. But today was different. Today, Maya was finally going to visit the restricted sector, specifically, the Dragon Containment Facility. She had been requesting access for months, ever since she learned that the station housed one of the most dangerous creatures known to the galaxy. The creature had been captured during the Battle of Proxima 7, where human forces had encountered it, destroying an entire Altarian colony. Military reports described it as nearly indestructible, measuring over 30 meters in length, with scales harder than titanium, and the ability to breathe plasma that could melt through starship hulls. The Galactic Council had tried everything to study it, to understand it. But the dragon had proven impossible to communicate with. It had killed or injured every researcher who had attempted contact. That was until Maya had proposed something different. Dr. Vex Thara, the station's chief xenobiologist and Maya's mentor, had initially refused her request. The tall Altarian's usually calm demeanor had cracked when Maya first suggested visiting the dragon. "Young human, Doctor," Vexa Thara had said, her translator struggling with the emotion in her voice. "This creature has demonstrated nothing but hostility toward every form of life it has encountered. Even our most advanced containment systems barely hold it. The psychological profiles suggest a intelligence driven purely by destruction." But Maya had persisted. She had spent weeks studying every piece of data available about the dragon, every failed attempt at communication, every recorded interaction. What others saw as mindless aggression, she began to recognize as something else entirely. The dragon's attacks weren't random. They followed patterns that suggested not mindless rage, but desperate fear. "It's not trying to destroy everything," Maya had argued during her final appeal to the Research Council. "It's trying to get home." The council chamber had fallen silent at her words. Representatives from 12 species sat around the curved table, their various forms of breathing, clicking, and humming, creating an odd symphony in the pause that followed. Commander Thane, the human military liaison, had been the first to speak. "Maya, I appreciate your insight. But this creature has killed 43 beings. It's not some lost pet, it's a weapon of mass destruction." "With respect, Commander," Maya had replied, her voice steady, despite the weight of all those alien eyes upon her. "Maybe it's killing because it thinks we're going to kill it first. Maybe it's been hurt so badly that it can't see anything else as a possibility." The memory of that moment played through Maya's mind as she approached the security checkpoint for the restricted sector. After 3 more weeks of debate, the council had finally agreed to let her try. The compromise was strict. She would have 15 minutes, under full military guard, with every possible safety protocol in place. If the dragon showed the slightest sign of aggression, she would be immediately evacuated. The security officer at the checkpoint was a young Altarian named Keftal, whose silver skin gleamed under the harsh corridor lighting. His large eyes studied Maya's authorization pad with the thoroughness typical of his species. "Miss Chen," he said, his translator rendering his natural harmonic speech into flat English, "I am required to inform you that the containment breach alarm will sound if the subject shows any aggressive behavior. At that signal, you must immediately return to the designated safe zone." Maya nodded, though her heart was racing. I understand the protocols. Officer Keftel. As they moved deeper into the restricted sector, the corridors grew wider and more heavily reinforced. Blast doors capable of withstanding nuclear explosions lined their path, and Maya could feel the subtle vibration of the massive force field generators buried in the station's superstructure. Whatever lay ahead, the Galactic Council was taking no chances. They passed through 3 more checkpoints, each one more heavily fortified than the last. At the final security station, Captain Narration of the Cetacean Defense Corps waited in her mobile tank. The dolphin-like being's sleek form moved gracefully through the artificial water, but Maya could see the tension in her posture. "Human child Maya," Captain Narration said through the water's speakers, using the formal address her people favored. "The creature grows more agitated as feeding time approaches. Perhaps today is not optimal for this attempt." "When was the last time anyone tried to feed it?" Maya asked. 14 cycles ago. It refuses all nourishment we provide. We estimate it has perhaps 30 cycles before biological failure begins." Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the recycled station air. The dragon was starving itself to death. In her research, she had read about similar behavior in captured animals from Earth's history. Sometimes, when creatures were taken from their natural environment and held in captivity, they would simply stop eating, preferring death to imprisonment. "Then this might be our last chance to reach it," she said quietly. The final approach to the containment chamber took them through a corridor lined with viewing windows. As they passed each one, Maya caught glimpses of the creature that had terrorized 3 star systems. At first, she saw only shadows moving in the vast chamber beyond. Then, as they reached the primary observation deck, she saw it fully for the first time. The dragon was magnificent and terrible in equal measure. Its scales were indeed like black titanium, but they caught the chamber's lights in ways that created patterns of deep purple and midnight blue. Its head was larger than most shuttlecraft, with intelligence gleaming in eyes the color of molten gold. When it moved, every motion spoke of power barely contained. But what struck Maya most wasn't the creature's size or obvious danger. It was the way it held itself in the far corner of the massive chamber, as far from the observation windows as possible. Its great head was turned away from them, and its body language spoke of defeat rather than rage. Dr. Vexthera approached Maya's hover chair, her tall form casting a shadow across the observation deck. The containment field extends in a sphere around the creature. It cannot approach within 50 meters of any surface. Force feedback systems prevent it from striking the barriers more than once before the pain response forces it to retreat. Maya studied the setup more carefully. The dragon wasn't just confined, it was isolated in the center of a space so large that it couldn't even touch the walls. She thought about her own early days after the accident, confined to a medical bed, unable to move freely, and how that isolation had felt like drowning in empty space. "How long has it been in there?" she asked. 67 cycles, Commander Thane replied from behind her. "We had to modify an entire cargo bay to create a chamber large enough and strong enough to hold it. 67 days in solitary confinement." Maya's throat felt tight as she imagined what that might do to any intelligent creature, especially one that might be hurt and afraid. She looked at the dragon again, noting how it kept its massive head turned away from them, and made a decision that would change everything. "I want to go inside," she said. The observation deck erupted in a cacophony of alien voices. Dr. Vexthara's harmonic speech rose to frequencies that made the translator screech. Captain Rayshawn's sonar clicks became so rapid that her tank's speakers couldn't keep up. Commander Thane simply stared at Maya as if she had announced her intention to jump into a star. "Absolutely not," the commander said when the noise died down. "Maya, the plan was for you to observe and attempt communication from here. Going inside the containment field is suicide. The dragon has been isolated for over 2 months," Maya replied, her voice calm despite the churning in her stomach. "Every interaction it's had with us has been hostile. We've treated it like a prisoner, not a patient. If I want to show it that humans are different, that we can be trusted, then I have to trust it first." Dr. Vexthara moved closer to Maya's chair. Her large eyes filled with something that the translator couldn't quite capture, but that Maya recognized as genuine concern. "Child of Earth, Your species' capacity for what you call compassion is well documented. But this creature has demonstrated only violence. To expose yourself to such danger based on theory alone, it's not just theory, Maya interrupted gently. Look at how it's positioned itself. It's not pacing or testing the barriers anymore. It's withdrawn, defensive. That's not the behavior of a mindless predator. That's the behavior of something that's given up. She turned her hover chair to face the assembled group of guards, researchers, and military personnel. I've been studying the attack patterns from Proxima 7. The dragon didn't attack randomly. It targeted military installations and government buildings first. It avoided civilian areas until it was cornered and desperate. That suggests it was looking for something specific, or trying to get away from something specific. Commander Thane crossed his arms. Even if that's true, it doesn't mean it won't kill you the moment you enter its reach. Maya looked back at the dragon, still motionless in its corner of the vast chamber. Maybe not. But if it was going to kill me, wouldn't it be better to know that it chose not to? Wouldn't that tell us more about its true nature than keeping it caged until it starves? The silence that followed her words was broken only by the hum of life support systems and the distant thrum of the station's rotation. Maya could see the conflict playing out in the faces around her, the struggle between their duty to keep her safe and their growing realization that she might be right. Finally, Captain Rayshawn spoke from her tank. What would you require for this attempt, human child Maya? Just me and my chair, Maya replied. No weapons, no guards, no force fields between us. If I'm going to show it that I trust it, then I have to actually trust it. Dr. Vexthera made a sound that her translator rendered as a sigh, though Maya suspected the emotional content was far more complex. The risks are considerable. If the creature reacts with aggression, then you evacuate me just like we planned, Maya finished. But if it doesn't, if it shows even the slightest sign that it can recognize me as something other than a threat, then maybe we can start to understand each other. The debate that followed lasted another 20 minutes, but Maya could see in their faces that she had already won. The logic of her argument was sound, even if the emotional cost was high. Finally, Commander Thane stepped forward. Against my better judgment, and with every possible precaution in place, we'll give you your chance. But Maya, at the first sign of trouble, you follow evacuation protocols without question. Understood? Maya nodded, though her mouth had gone dry. She had argued for this moment for months. But now that it was here, the reality of what she was about to do settled over her like a cold weight. She was about to enter a chamber with one of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, armed with nothing but hope and the belief that understanding could bridge even the greatest divide between species. As the technicians began the process of opening the containment chamber, Maya took one last look at the dragon. It still hadn't moved from its corner, but something about its posture had changed slightly. Its great head had lifted just a fraction, as if it had somehow sensed that something was different about today. Here we go, Maya whispered to herself, and guided her hover chair toward the opening that would either prove her theory right or cost her everything. The containment field shimmered like heat waves as it powered down, leaving only empty space between Maya and 30 meters of apex predator. The silence in the chamber was absolute, broken only by the soft hum of her hover chair's repulsors and the distant sound of her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. Maya moved slowly through the entrance, her hands steady on the chair's controls despite the tremor she felt deep in her chest. Behind her, she knew that dozens of eyes watched through reinforced windows, and dozens more monitored her vital signs and the dragon's behavior through sensors she couldn't see. Emergency evacuation systems stood ready to extract her in less than 3 seconds if needed, but all of that felt distant now. In this moment, there was only her and the dragon. The creature still hadn't moved from its position in the far corner of the chamber. As Maya drew closer, she could see details that the long-range observations had missed. The dragon's scales weren't just black with hints of color. They were carved with intricate patterns that seemed almost like scarification. Along its neck and shoulders, she could make out what looked like geometric designs, too precise and purposeful to be natural. More concerning were the areas where scales had been torn away, leaving patches of healing flesh that spoke of recent violence. The dragon's left wing showed damage that looked like weapon burns, and there were scratches along its flanks that appeared too regular to be accidental. Maya stopped her chair about 20 meters away from the dragon and simply waited. She had studied enough animal behavior to know that sudden movements or aggressive approaches would only confirm the creature's worst fears about her intentions. Instead, she sat quietly and let the dragon decide what would happen next. Minutes passed. Maya's throat was dry, and she could feel sweat collecting on her palms despite the chamber's cool temperature. She forced herself to breathe steadily, to project calm, even though every instinct screamed at her to retreat to safety. Then, slowly, the dragon's great head began to turn. Maya found herself looking into eyes the size of dinner plates, ancient and intelligent and filled with pain that made her chest tight. The dragon studied her with obvious caution, its massive head tilting slightly as it took in her small form and the strange device that carried her. When it finally spoke, the sound was like distant thunder mixed with wind chimes, beautiful and terrible at the same time. Maya's universal translator struggled with the complex harmonics before finally producing words she could understand. "You are not like the others," the dragon said, its voice carrying overtones that her equipment couldn't quite capture. Maya had to swallow twice before she could find her voice. "No, I'm not. My name is Maya. I wanted to meet you." The dragon's eyes narrowed, and Maya caught a glimpse of teeth longer than her forearm as its lips pulled back slightly. "Meet me? Is that what you call this imprisonment? This torture of isolation?" "I call it a mistake," Maya replied quietly. "A terrible mistake born from fear and misunderstanding." The dragon's massive form shifted, bringing its head closer to Maya's level, though still keeping significant distance between them. "Fear? The small creatures who cage me speak of fear? I am the one who should fear, trapped in this box of light and metal, cut off from sky and wind and the songs of my people." Maya felt her heart clench at the raw pain in the dragon's voice. "Songs of your people? You're not the only one." "I was not, until your kind came with fire and death to my world." The dragon's voice grew harder, and Maya saw the muscles in its neck tense. "I was the last guardian of the sacred mountain when your ships darkened the sky. I fought to protect what remained of my clutch, my younglings who had not yet learned to fly." The pieces began to fall into place in Maya's mind, and the picture they formed made her stomach turn. The colony on Proxima 7. That wasn't a colony, was it? That was your home. The dragon's eyes flashed with something that might have been surprise. "You did not know? The tall, pale ones told you nothing of how they came to my world with promises of trade and cooperation? How they showed interest in our culture, our history, our young? Our—" Maya shook her head, though her throat felt too tight to speak. "They said they wished to study us, to learn from us. We welcomed them, shared our knowledge, showed them the sacred places where our eggs were kept, and when they had learned enough, when they knew where we were weakest." The dragon's voice trailed off into a sound that Maya's translator couldn't render, but she didn't need technology to understand grief. "They tried to steal your children," Maya whispered. "They took them all," the dragon confirmed, its massive form seeming to shrink in on itself. "Eggs that would have hatched within days. The future of my entire species, loaded onto transport ships, while my people fought and died, trying to stop them." Maya felt sick. Everything she had been told, everything the official reports had claimed about the Battle of Proxima 7, had been a lie. There had been no human colony under attack by a rampaging monster. There had been a people defending their young from slavers and thieves. "The younglings?" she managed to ask. "What happened to them?" The dragon's eyes met hers, and Maya saw in them a depth of loss that made her own struggles seem small. "Scattered across the galaxy, sold to private collectors and research facilities. My people are long-lived. We reproduce rarely. Those eggs represented the next generation of my kind. Perhaps the last generation. And now they grow up alone, if they grow up at all, never knowing the songs of their ancestors or the feel of wind beneath their wings." Maya's hands clenched in her lap. She thought about her own family, about how her parents had moved halfway across the galaxy just to keep them together after her accident. She thought about what it would feel like to have that torn away, to know that someone had stolen not just her loved ones but her entire future. "You came to Earth space looking for them," she said. It wasn't a question. "I followed the ship's signatures, the energy traces. Your vessels were among those that left my world. I thought perhaps your people had taken some of my young, or knew where they had been taken." The dragon's voice grew quieter. "I tried to communicate, but your ships fired upon me before I could speak. When I defended myself, more came, and more." Maya closed her eyes for a moment, imagining the scene. A desperate parent searching the galaxy for stolen children, approaching human ships for help or information, only to be met with weapons fire. The dragon's attacks on military installations suddenly made perfect sense. It had been trying to find someone with authority, someone who could tell it where its children were. "I'm sorry," she said. And the words felt completely inadequate. "I'm so sorry for what was done to you, for what was done to your family." The dragon studied her for a long moment. "You speak with grief in your voice, small one. But you are young, and your kind are short-lived. You could not have been part of the theft." "No. But my people were. Some of them, anyway." Maya looked up at the dragon's massive face, trying to read the intelligence behind those ancient eyes. "What's your name? I know you're not just the dragon or the creature. You have a name." Another of those uninterpretable sounds escaped the dragon's throat. When it spoke again, the words came with harmonics that made Maya's bones vibrate. "In your limited language, you might call me Kayatharian. It means guardian of the mountain's heart in the old tongue." "Katharion," Maya repeated, doing her best to approximate the complex sounds. "It's beautiful." For the first time since Maya had entered the chamber, something like surprise crossed the dragon's features. "You attempt to speak my name properly. The others who questioned me could not be bothered to try." "They questioned you?" Maya felt anger building in her chest. "They had you here for over 2 months. And they never tried to understand why you were looking for the ships? They never asked about your children?" Katharian's laugh was bitter and deep. "They assumed I was a beast driven by instinct. When I tried to explain, they increased the power of their pain devices. When I sang the mourning songs for my lost young, they played loud sounds to make me stop. They wanted me to be the monster they believed me to be." Maya's hands gripped the arms of her chair so tightly that her knuckles went white. She thought about the research notes she had read, the clinical descriptions of the dragon's aggressive vocalizations and resistance to containment protocols. No one had bothered to run those sounds through linguistic analysis programs. No one had considered that the dragon might be trying to communicate, rather than simply expressing rage. "That's not going to happen anymore," she said firmly. "I promise you that." Katharian moved closer, its massive head now only a few meters from Maya's chair. Up close, she could see that the geometric patterns on its scales weren't decorations but writing, complex characters that seemed to shift and change in the chamber's light. "You make promises easily, youngling. But what power do you have among your people? You cannot even walk." Maya had expected the observation, but it still stung. She forced herself to remain calm. "You're right. I have no political power, no military rank, no authority over anyone, but I have something else. What could you possibly have that would matter to beings who steal children and torture their parents?" Maya reached into the small storage compartment of her chair and withdrew a device that most of the alien races on the station wouldn't recognize. It was old by galactic standards, a primitive recording device by the standards of species that had been traveling between stars for millennia. But it was human technology, and it was designed for human purposes. "I have the ability to tell your story to people who will listen. Not the government officials or the military commanders, but regular people. Humans who have children of their own, who understand what it means to love someone enough to search the galaxy for them." Katharian's eyes fixed on the recording device. "You would do this? Even knowing it might bring danger to yourself?" "Especially knowing that," Maya replied. "My people have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. I may not be able to walk, I may not be able to fight, but I can make sure your voice is heard." The dragon was silent for a long moment, its great head tilting as it studied Maya with new intensity. When it spoke again, its voice was softer, filled with something that might have been hope. "There is something else, youngling Maya. Something I have not told the others because I knew they would not understand." "What is it?" Catherian moved even closer, until Maya could feel the heat radiating from its massive form. "Some of my young still live. I can feel them, faintly, across the void. The bond between dragon parent and child is not easily broken by distance or time. 3 of them still sing in my dreams, still call for help that I cannot give." Maya's breath caught in her throat. 3 of them? Where? Do you know where they are? The songs grow stronger in some directions, weaker in others. "If I were free to search, if I could follow the pull of their voices." Catherian's voice trailed off, but Maya could hear the desperate hope beneath the words. "We'll find them," Maya said without thinking. "I don't know how yet, but we'll find them." Catherian's laugh was bitter. "Your people will not free me to search for stolen property. To them, I am the dangerous animal, the threat to be contained. They care nothing for dragon children in cages." "Then we'll have to change their minds," Maya replied. "And I think I know how to start." She activated the recording device and looked up into Catherian's golden eyes. "Will you tell your story? Not to the researchers or the military, but to ordinary people who might understand? Will you let me share your voice with the galaxy?" For the first time since Maya had entered the chamber, Catherian's massive form seemed to relax slightly. The dragon settled into a more comfortable position, its great head lowering until it was level with Maya's chair. "I will tell you everything, youngling Maya. I will tell you of my world before the ships came, of my mate who died defending our home, of the songs my children sang before they were torn from their shells. I will tell you all of it, if you promise to help me find them." "I promise," Maya said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. As Catherian began to speak, his voice filling the chamber with harmonics that spoke of love and loss and desperate hope, Maya realized that everything was about to change. Not just for the dragon, not just for the station, but for the entire galaxy's understanding of what had really happened at Proxima 7. Behind the observation windows, she knew that sensors were recording everything. Dr. Vexthera and Commander Thane were probably debating whether to end the session or let it continue. But Maya no longer cared about protocols or safety measures or political consequences. She had come here to prove that humans could show compassion to even the most fearsome creatures in the galaxy. What she had discovered instead was that sometimes the most fearsome creatures were the ones who loved the most fiercely, and that true courage wasn't about facing down monsters but about standing up for those who had been made into monsters by circumstance and cruelty. The real test was just beginning. The emergency council session convened 18 hours after Maya's recording had begun circulating through the station's networks. Word of Catherian's story had spread like wildfire through the diverse populations aboard Kepler station, and the reactions had been immediate and intense. Maya sat in her hover chair at the center of the circular council chamber, surrounded by representatives from every major species in the Galactic Council. The atmosphere was tense enough to cut with a blade, and Maya could feel the weight of dozens of alien gazes upon her. Some held anger, others confusion, but increasingly, she saw something she hadn't expected: shame. Dr. Vexthera sat to her left, the tall Altarian silver skin pale with stress. To her right, Captain Narration floated in her mobile tank, the cetacean's usually graceful movements, sharp with agitation. Even Commander Thane seemed uncomfortable as he stood at attention behind Maya's chair. The recording device sat on the table before her, its simple human design looking primitive among the advanced holographic displays and quantum storage units favored by the other species. But that little device had captured something more powerful than all their technology combined: the truth. Council Chairman Zethkar, a massive being whose species resembled stone giants, spoke first. His voice rumbled like an avalanche as the translators struggled to keep up with his deep, slow speech. "Maya Chen of Earth, you have presented this council with serious accusations regarding the incident at Proxima 7. You claim that the official reports filed by our Altarian colleagues contain significant omissions and misrepresentations. Maya kept her voice steady as she replied, I'm not claiming anything, Chairman. I'm simply sharing what Catharian told me, in his own words. The recording speaks for itself. Counselor Yithrana, one of the Altarian representatives, stood with obvious reluctance. Her harmonious voice carried undertones that the translator rendered as defensive anger. This council should remember that we have only the word of a creature that has killed dozens of beings and destroyed 3 colony ships. Why should we trust the testimony of such a violent entity? The response came not from Maya, but from an unexpected source. Dr. Keftal, the young Altarian security officer, who had worked closely with Maya over the past weeks, rose from his position near the chamber wall. Counselor Yithrana, with respect, I have reviewed the linguistic analysis of the creature's vocalizations from its first days in containment. What our researchers dismissed as aggressive noise shows consistent patterns matching morning songs from 17 different sapient species. The creature was not threatening us. It was grieving. A murmur ran through the chamber as translators struggled to convey the emotional content of various species' reactions. Maya saw several beings lean forward with obvious interest, while others seemed to shrink back in their seats. Dr. Vexthara stood slowly, her tall form seeming to wilt under the pressure of what she was about to say. I have conducted my own review of the Proxima 7 incident files. There are inconsistencies in the official reports that cannot be explained by normal operational variants. What kind of inconsistencies? Chairman Zethkar asked. The initial reports describe an unprovoked attack on a research station. However, the biological surveys from that period indicate the presence of large, organized nest structures across the planet's surface, structures that were excavated and their contents removed prior to the arrival of our defensive forces. The chamber erupted in voices as representatives from a dozen species began talking at once. Maya watched the chaos unfold, feeling sick to her stomach as the implications became clear. The evidence had been there all along, buried in routine reports that no one had bothered to cross-reference. Chairman Zethkar's voice boomed over the noise, calling for order. When the chamber quieted, he turned his massive, stone-like features toward Maya. Human child, what is it you wish this council to do with this information? Maya had prepared for this moment, but actually saying the words still took every ounce of courage she possessed. I want you to help Catharian find his children, and I want you to make sure that what happened to his people never happens to anyone else. Counselor Yithrana's translator screeched with overtones of dismay. You ask us to release a dangerous creature based on an emotional appeal? Even if the being's story is accurate, it has demonstrated its capacity for violence. The risk to civilian populations would be enormous. The risk to 3 innocent children who are probably terrified and alone right now is what we should be worried about. Maya shot back, her calm demeanor finally cracking. Catharian isn't dangerous because he's evil. He's dangerous because he's desperate. Give him hope. Give him a chance to save his family. And I guarantee you'll see a different being entirely. Captain Rayshawn's sonar clicks filled her tank as she spoke. The human child raises valid points about motivation and behavioral modification through environmental factors. However, the practical difficulties of such a search would be considerable. Actually, Maya said, reaching for a datapad she had prepared, they might not be as difficult as we think. Goad. She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the council chamber. It showed a 3-dimensional map of local space, with dozens of star systems marked in different colors. I've been working with the station's AI to analyze shipping manifests, cargo transfers, and customs records for the past 3 months. If you're looking for rare biological specimens that were moved quickly and quietly through black market channels, there are only a limited number of facilities equipped to handle them. The map shifted, showing fewer than 20 star systems highlighted in red. Cross-reference that with facilities that have the resources to maintain large-scale life support for unknown alien species, and you get an even smaller list. The hologram zoomed in on 3 systems, each marked with pulsing icons. Add in Catharian's testimony about being able to sense his children's approximate direction and distance, and you get 3 possible locations, 3 places we could search. Counselor Zethkar leaned forward, his massive frame creating shadows across the holographic display. You propose to mount rescue operations based on parental intuition and shipping records. I propose to mount rescue operations based on the best intelligence we have and the moral obligation to save 3 kidnapped children, Maya replied firmly. Regardless of species, the silence that followed stretched for long moments. Maya could see the council representatives struggling with the implications of her words. To agree would be to admit that their justice system had failed catastrophically. To refuse would be to condemn 3 innocent beings to continued captivity. It was Dr. Vexthera who finally broke the silence. There is another consideration the council must address. If we attempt this rescue and succeed, we will be confronting individuals and organizations powerful enough to conduct interstellar kidnapping operations. The political ramifications could be severe. Then we do it quietly, Maya said. Small teams, minimal official involvement. Let people think it's a routine inspection or a scientific survey. Save the children first. Worry about justice later. Commander Thane stepped forward, his military bearing rigid with tension. Maya, what you're proposing could start a diplomatic incident. Maybe even a war. Maya turned to look at him, and for a moment, she saw not the decorated military officer but the father she knew he was. The man whose own daughter was safely attending academy on Earth. Commander, if someone took your child and sold her to collectors on the other side of the galaxy, what would you do? How far would you go to get her back? Thane's jaw worked silently for several seconds before he replied. I'd tear the galaxy apart with my bare hands if I had to. Then you understand why Catharian fought an entire battle fleet to try to save his children. And you understand why we have to help him now. Maya stood slowly from her hover chair, the servos whining as they adjusted to support her weight. It was difficult and painful, but she needed to look the council members in the eye as equals, not as a child seeking permission. 6 months ago, I was lying in a hospital bed convinced that my life was over, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I couldn't walk, couldn't run, couldn't do any of the things I thought defined who I was. But I learned something important during those dark days. She looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of each representative in turn. Strength isn't about what your body can do. It's about what your heart refuses to accept. My heart refuses to accept that those 3 children should spend the rest of their lives in cages because the adults around them were too afraid or too proud to do the right thing. Maya reached into her chair's storage compartment and withdrew something that caused several gasps throughout the chamber. It was a small, crystalline device that gleamed with inner light, beautiful beyond words. Catharian gave this to me yesterday, she said, holding the crystal up so everyone could see it. It's called a heart song. Among his people, it's the most precious gift you can give someone. It contains a recording of his children's voices, singing together, from before they were taken. She activated the device, and the chamber filled with sounds unlike anything any of them had ever heard. The voices were young and sweet, harmonizing in ways that spoke of joy and innocence and limitless possibility. The song lasted only 30 seconds, but when it ended, Maya could see tears on faces that belonged to species she hadn't even known could cry. Those children have been silent for over 3 months now, Maya said quietly. They don't know if anyone is coming for them. They don't know if anyone even cares that they're gone. We can change that. We can bring their voices back. Chairman Zethkar's voice, when he finally spoke, was quieter than Maya had ever heard it. What exactly are you proposing, child of Earth? Maya took a deep breath. Give me a ship. A small one. Fast enough to reach those 3 target systems quickly. Give me Catharian as a guide and a small security detail to handle any complications we might encounter. Let us find those children and bring them home. You? Counselor Yithrana's translator screeched with dismay. You would lead this mission yourself? You're barely an adult. And you're disabled besides. I'm the only person here that Catharian trusts completely, Maya replied calmly. I'm the only one he's shared the heart song with. The only one he's taught to recognize the psychic resonance that connects him to his children. Without me, any rescue mission is just shooting blind in the dark. Captain Rayshawn's sonar clicks filled her tank as she spoke. The risks to a civilian, particularly one with mobility challenges, would be considerable. The risks to those children if we do nothing are worse, Maya countered. Besides, I won't be alone. I'll have the finest security team the Galactic Council can provide, and I'll have a 30-meter dragon who would die before letting anything happen to me or his children. The debate that followed lasted 3 hours, but Maya could see from the beginning how it would end. The recording of the heart song had changed something fundamental in the chamber's atmosphere. These beings, for all their different forms and cultures, recognized the sound of innocence in distress. They understood, finally, what was truly at stake. When the vote was finally called, it passed by a margin that surprised even Maya. Not unanimous, but decisive enough to authorize the mission under emergency humanitarian protocols. Chairman Zethkar's final words still echoed in Maya's mind as she made her way through the station corridors toward the docking bay where their ship waited. Maya Chen of Earth. This council charges you with a mission of mercy that transcends species and politics. You carry with you not just the hopes of one parent for his children, but the moral weight of an entire galaxy's conscience. Do not fail us. As Maya approached the docking bay, she could see Catharian waiting for her. His massive form somehow fitted into the cargo hold of the fast courier ship that would take them on their search. The dragon's golden eyes met hers through the transparent aluminum viewing port, and Maya saw in them something that had been absent during their first meeting. Hope. Dr. Vexthara waited near the boarding ramp, her tall form drooping with worry and pride in equal measure. Child of Earth, I hope you understand the magnitude of what you have accomplished here today. You have changed more than one family's fate. You have changed the way an entire civilization thinks about justice and compassion. Maya looked back through the viewing port one more time, watching Catharian as the dragon settled into position for the journey ahead. I had a good teacher, she said quietly. He showed me that sometimes the most important battles aren't fought with weapons or politics. Sometimes they're fought with nothing but the refusal to give up on someone who needs you. As the ship's engines powered up and the docking clamps released, Maya felt a sensation she hadn't experienced since before her accident. The feeling of moving towards something important, something that would define not just her own future but the future of everyone around her. 3 star systems lay ahead. 3 chances to reunite a family torn apart by greed and prejudice. It wouldn't be easy, and there was no guarantee of success, but for the first time since she'd arrived at Kepler Station, Maya Chen felt like she was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. Behind them, the station grew smaller in the viewport. Ahead of them, somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, 3 young voices waited to sing again, and Maya was going to make sure they got that chance.